I wanted to talk about some of the major themes that we're kind of seeing across core improvements in the Filecoin project, protocol, ecosystem over the past 2 quarters, like really over all of 2022. The things that we've been seeing land in Q1 and Q2, and the really exciting breakthroughs that are coming in Q3 and Q4 that everyone is probably already sick of hearing about because we're all so excited we can't shut up. I kind of grouped the set of milestones that I see coming across kind of like core improvements at a protocol level into 3 main categories. First and foremost, where a ton of, well, maybe not first and foremost. First and foremost is honestly capacity and data onboarding. This has been a massive focus. You can see the number of things that are happening in this space, making sure that Filecoin can support all of the capacity that you as storage providers are bringing to the network and makes it easier, more efficient, cheaper, better, more reliable to onboard data and capacity onto the network. There's been a ton of improvements happening there. If you haven't yet updated to Lotus 15.2, there's a lot of new improvements in there that you should be taking advantage of. All of the work that we did kind of starting in August of last year and going through March on snap deals was to help accelerate data onboarding and create the ability for new groups to come into the network and just focus on upgrading existing sectors with data. There's been a ton of work that the Slingshot and other kind of related programs have been doing to help onboard public, socially good data and preserve it over time. And a ton of new products that are coming, Philmine, Boost, which you'll hear a lot more about soon, that really help with both capacity onboarding and data onboarding. So that's really first and foremost, it's Filecoin's bread and butter. We want it to be an amazing storage network that preserves humanity's data, and we have a constant upgrade trajectory around doing that better, and it's all of your feedback that helps us kind of improve things like core Lotus, Venus, Forest implementations to make that better and easier. Personally, this is the thing that I'm super excited about, bringing programmability and compute into the Filecoin network. We have been hard at work on this for a long time. We're approaching FVM milestone 1, which is we are going to be re-platforming the entire Filecoin network from kind of our existing actors model and our existing VM structure onto a WASM IPLD VM, and switching over to Rust actors as like the main kind of like consensus securing. So it's very exciting. A lot of testing has happened, a lot of security work, validation, auditing to make sure this is a super smooth transition for the entire network. But bear with us if we're going a little bit slower than we expected. We want to keep everything very stable and secure. That's our top priority, even though we want to bring these things to you like 2 years ago. And so there's been a ton of work happening over time with the Early Builders program to also start today building the smart contracts and loan markets and new storage markets and compute systems that are going to be running on top of Filecoin in the future. And so there's some really exciting work happening in the compute over data working group, where a lot of different groups, Phil Swan, I think I said Charles Cow over here, some of the groups on Bacalao, a number of other groups are getting involved on building computation networks so you don't just compute over the state and run programs over the state in Filecoin, but you can then also run programs that access data, IPL data, stored in Filecoin sectors, and do computation, restore their data in new Filecoin sectors, and iterate. And like, this is so exciting, so cool. It's not possible in blockchain systems to date, and so we're really excited to be kind of like breaking new ground here. And then finally, the last major thread that is getting more and more of a priority. Many of the people in like the SPX working group have been doing a lot of work around retrievals as part of Slingshot Evergreen, where we are retrieving data from existing deals on the Filecoin network and making sure that we can up their replication or we can increase their geographic distribution so that data is really effectively preserved. There's also been a ton of work happening to index all of the CIDs stored in Filecoin sectors so that anyone can retrieve data by looking it up from an indexer and then going and fetching it from the storage provider who has it. This is something that's going to already being used across both the Filecoin and IPFS nodes. So they're all indexing their data and using this for great. Pinata, NFT.storage, Infura, who have large collections of data, can use this to announce and make their data accessible much more efficiently. I'm sure many of you have already heard about retrieval markets. If not, go talk to Patrick. He will tell you, and OnScar, amazing, yeah. They will tell you all about Saturn, all about the amazing work that's happening across Mile. There's a ton of groups that I don't even know, like Titan and like other amazing things, so go talk to them. This is also super, super cool. You guys will probably all get to run the first retrieval nodes, which makes me sad because I want to run one on my phone all the time. But really excited to bring a whole new community of folks into the Filecoin network. And maybe not storage providers, but we're going to love our retrieval providers as well, and bring them into the network and community. And then there's some really cool stuff that's happening on the CryptoNet Lab team that you should definitely go read their Notion. It's open, it's accessible. You can read all about these awesome new projects that they're creating that will be launched on top of FVM. There's a data retrievability oracle that there's already an MVP up and running on Ethereum testnet. So you can go and play with it. We may start using this for various things. I have some ideas. If anyone wants to talk to me about how we can add additional guarantees for Filecoin Plus data to be retrievable, I would be very interested in talking to people about that. I think it could be cool. And then there's also some really exciting new work that's coming more in the Q1 timeframe, but research and development and prototyping is starting today because we have a long research and development pipeline. We don't just think about tomorrow or the next day. We're thinking about next year, years after that, and the amazing improvements we want to bring that can enable you to do data retrievability controls or data access controls on top of smart contracts in FVM. Last but absolutely not least, I know this kind of fits into the capacity and data onboarding perspective, but there's some amazing work being done by the Consensus Lab team to bring a hierarchical sharding version of Consensus to Filecoin, which makes all of the chain space for all of this good stuff to happen, so we can have all of the programmability and compute and fill the chain full of tons of amazing growth and progress. And then we have the space sharding subchild chains to make room for all of that. And so that's just a big picture thing. Daniel and Brenda are going to dive more, especially into some of the boost and deeper kind of capacity and data onboarding improvements that have happened over the past couple of months. But I wanted to give you a big picture and request your feedback. Like, I know this needs to improve, and we'll be working on putting it in a place where you can add lots of stuff to this as well. But I also want to know about all the cool stuff that's happening, so come and tell me about it if it's not on my list. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I have time to take questions. I mean, actually, I think maybe let them talk, and then we'll all take questions together. Sound good?
All right. So I'll talk about Lotus, and then I'll hand it over to Brenda to talk about Boost, the Indexer, and Saturn. Great. So last time we were in Austin, we gathered a lot of great feedback from storage providers. We took that feedback and consolidated it into a priority list, and that priority list was passed along to the Lotus team. The Lotus team was able to use that list to actually prioritize the work that was going into the next quarter. A couple of top issues here, like the flexible scheduler and CCX core scheduling. So a couple of these were big pain points for storage providers, essentially not allowing storage providers to get the most out of their systems. Also, as for the CCX core scheduling, just significantly decreasing the sealing time. Both those went straight to the Lotus team. They were able to take account that this was a big pain point and prioritize these issues. Both these have been resolved or are in testing. The SPX team worked with the Lotus team to get some of these a fix in place. That fix is currently in testing and is actually going really well. So it's on track to getting resolved as well. A few other issues here related to the Lotus wallet and related to the multiple markets node that was talked about earlier. All of these, thanks to your feedback, has come to the front and center. Right now is being worked on by the Lotus team and by the Boost team to get resolved this quarter as well. As far as upcoming projects go, all of this is now public. This was a private page before this Lotus roadmap page. You can see upcoming projects. You can see who's assigned to what projects, how they're being prioritized, when they're scheduled to be complete. So we'll send out this deck afterwards as well, and you can get access to all of these links to this public page for Lotus. Molly mentioned some upgrades that are happening. The Lotus release timelines are now on that page in public as well. Network v16 is currently testing in ButterflyNet. It'll be testing in CalibrationNet as early as next week. And then the full upgrade is expected to happen at the end of June and early July. In the meantime, Network v17 is also being scoped, and you can see all those Lotus release timelines on that same page. If you want to know more, lots of resources available. We have a number of Slack channels that talk about Lotus and the FVM. There's a number of public roadmaps that you can access, and then that GitHub page has the main Lotus repo. The Lotus team wants to continue to hear from you and get your feedback to close that feedback loop. So they're going to be sending out this survey. The survey is meant to get the major pain points that are happening right now across the network. We really want to make sure that there's constant feedback so that they can understand what features to prioritize, what bugs and issues to prioritize, and really shape that roadmap from your feedback. The other thing that's happening right now is we want to really be able to project what's happening across teams at Protocol Labs back to you. So we're going to be starting up an SP newsletter, and that SP newsletter is going to have information about features that are coming out, issues that are being fixed that are related to storage providers, and specifically geared towards you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Brenda to talk about Boost.
Thanks again for coming. I'm going to cover a bit about Boost, also Indexer and Saturn. Actually, there's also folks from the Indexer team and Saturn team here, so we can ask questions to them later, but I'll just be presenting on their behalf because I know we're a little short on time. So really quickly, what is Boost? I think most of you guys have actually given us great feedback already, but it's essentially a new markets module that's going to eventually replace the Lotus Markets subsystem. So it comes with a number of new features, thanks to feedback from you guys actually earlier in the fall. So we've incorporated a number of your feedback into Boost. So there's a new web UI, there's more data transfer options, there's more tooling support. And if any of you are using Bidbar or Estuary today to receive deals, it should be working. So if you're running into problems, please report it to us. Okay, updates. Right now, we're in pre-release testing, so thank you to everyone who has upgraded already and given us feedback. I really strongly encourage all of you who have not upgraded yet to upgrade. It's in pre-release testing, and we want to get your feedback before we do full launch, which we are hoping to do mid-June, which is next week. So if you run into problems, please let us know. We want to address them immediately and quickly so that we have a very stable release for everyone. And really quickly to share roadmap, as Daniel and Molly both mentioned, we're looking to scale Boost so you can run multiple markets nodes to work with your miners. So we'd really like to better understand what the main limitations are with when you're onboarding data, so we can better scale out Boost. We also are looking to do some of the retrieval capabilities that we haven't been able to focus on yet. So if you have any information about how you want to operationalize your retrieval deals and how to run all of your, interact with clients to work on retrievals, please let us know. That way we can help, it'll help us prioritize how we're going to work on whether it's enabling HTTP retrieval or like bit swap retrieval for IPFS retrievals. That would be really helpful to us. Yeah, so some links if you want to learn more and give us your feedback. All right, now I'm going to talk really quickly about Indexer. So Molly actually talked about this a bit earlier, but essentially, if you haven't heard of Indexer yet, it's essentially a new node on the Filecoin network that is going to map all the CIDs on the Filecoin network that you guys are storing to the storage providers that are holding these CIDs. And so this is going to be really helpful to enable content discovery on the network from both an IPFS and Filecoin perspective. So that's really awesome. Thanks to the great team that's been working on this. Hong Hao from the Indexer team is also here, so feel free to ask him questions later about Indexer if you either want to run it. We're looking for people to run Indexer nodes as well. So if you're interested in doing that, let us know. We'll help you get started. All right, yeah, updates. Our team is running an Indexer node in production. So for those of you who have enabled this, you were actively indexing your data. There's also other teams that are running Indexer nodes. So it's really awesome to see how much content's been indexed and enable more content discovery. So couple next steps here. You can read about it here, but essentially we want to scale it to petabyte scale. We want to also decentralize Indexer nodes. We want to do shared federation, and we want to do more scaling. So yeah, lots of exciting work happening. Some resources here. Feel free to yeah, feel free to read at your leisure. Saturn, all right. So I am also presenting this on behalf of the Saturn team. So please talk to Patrick or Ansgar, who are there in the back, if you have additional questions later on. So Saturn, I think, if you guys haven't heard of it yet, is actually all of the retrieval markets work that's been happening, but it's going to be a decentralized CDN for retrieval on Filecoin. So to give a really quick overview, there's kind of like 3 layers of this CDN that's being worked on right now. One is kind of the network edge nodes, which are called the L1 nodes. There's also the intermediate cache nodes called L2 nodes. And then there's the storage providers, you guys, who are actually holding all of the content, and this is the content that's going to be served on the CDN. So the way that the network flow is going to go is that you have these L1 nodes who are going to be doing most of the, I guess, like serving that content on the network, and then on cache misses, they'll go to the L2 nodes. If the L2 also has cache miss, they'll go to the storage providers. So that's how it's going to work. Roadmap for what's happening right now on the Saturn project. Right now, the L1 network is live in private testing, and you can see the roadmap here. In Q2, we want to hopefully beat the IPFS gateway in performance. We want to launch the L1s publicly in Q3 so people can run their own L1 nodes and earn Filecoin for doing so. And yeah, in Q4, more launches for L2 nodes. So yeah, if you want to get involved, please reach out to Ansgar or Patrick. There's lots of work going on there.
I've heard from quite a few people, storage providers, a question about once FVM kind of launches, how will that affect, or will it affect gas prices like we've seen in other networks?
So I think there's a couple of different FVM launches. There's FVM M1, which is coming in the next network upgrade that folks mentioned. I think RC going out next week, and calibration net upgrades. You'll be able to test for yourself in calibration net how gas changes there. There was an estimate that I believe was put in the FIP that I don't remember off the top of my head for the sort of increases that we expect. I think there is going to be a slight effect, but we think it is pretty minimal, especially because we have all of the space of aggregations for pre-commit, post-commit, all of that stuff, all the batching capabilities of the network that are currently not being utilized. So we have lots of space to move into that before we should expect any significant impacts on like base fee or anything like that. We don't have enough data yet for what it'll look like once we have a lot of smart contracts on Filecoin. That's an unsolved problem yet. We don't know. But we'll be doing a lot of benchmarking and testing ahead of time to see how things go. And we also, that's one of the reasons we're working on all of the consensus sharding in parallel so that we have the increased chain space so that as we hopefully have many amazing smart contracts running on top of Filecoin doing all sorts of useful things, we also have the space to expand into. Again, we're not currently utilizing anything close to the capacity that Filecoin has available, and we can always increase our ability to batch proof commits and pre-commits even more than what's currently allowed in the network if we were to reach those limits. And so we actually do have a lot of space to expand into before we should expect any like massive changes.
Hey, we were talking a little bit earlier about the 540-day reseal rebuild. Is there anything in the roadmap that will make that more efficient long term when we're talking about like 7-year contracts, 10-year contracts, et cetera?
Yeah, so this is right now when you make a, you add a sector or you make a storage deal, you can make it for up to 1.5 years, I believe, and then you can continue extending that for up to 5 years as a lifetime, and that's a security factor where if at any point we discover that there's like issues or we introduce like new improved proofs and other things that we want the network to migrate to, either for security reasons or for having a greener foundation for the network, that we want old things to expire off the network gracefully and not to have just locked ourselves into 100-year deals that like no one can get out of without getting slashed massively. So like we need that capability. Like obviously if we get to 5 years from now and we're like, nope, everything's cool, we're all good, it's chill, then like, those are numbers that we as a network can file FIPS and talk about changing. Back in whatever it was, when the V1 proofs, I think a year ago, February, when the V1 proofs were expiring, and there's a set of people who had done 6-month V1 proofs. They were like, okay, like what if we can just extend those up to the length of all of the other proofs? And we decided as a network, you know, I think this was initiated by either someone on the IPFS main team or someone on the IPFS Force team. One of those that okay, there was a vote, a poll of all storage providers. We decided we wanted to take that on, and we did. And so these are things that we can adjust. Personally, I would love to see the length of a deal that you can initially commit to the network be longer. Again, it is a security parameter, and so we need to do that with kind of a thoughtful modeling of like, well, what are the, you know, how is like the growth rate of compute and like the hardware changing, so that we can make sure that we, you know, we expect all of our proofs to still continue to be super secure for the entire lifetime that we kind of commit to for those things. But I would love to see it be higher, and I think that would save us all a lot of time and energy renewing deals and renewing sectors and all sorts of good stuff, which I think would be great. JV?
Oh, I was just gonna also throw in one comment on that. Like, I think it's also probably important to distinguish between like what do we need at like the proof level and what are things that could be smart contracts on top. If we're talking about like from the client side, how do we get like an arbitrary length deal? That could easily be a smart contract, which is like CID, some number of copies, some funds that are just set as a bounty, and then building logic in between that just says like, do we always see some number of proofs within some number of hours? So like from the perspective of like the miner, where it's like we want to minimize the amount of times that you have to like over a 10-year period, like reseal, do whatever, and interact with some deal-making thing. I think that's like a good UX thing to like solve for. But from the perspective of the client, hopefully we'll have like smart contracts that sort of like hide a good chunk of that bit, so we can actually get to something that's like, how do we get some arbitrary length deal without having to like break the security assumptions?
I had a question. How many of SPs here are interested in running Saturn? Yes, more. And how many of you are going to charge for it? No, sorry, that was a joke. No, there was a previous session where we talked about charging for it, and I'm trying everyone to.
I mean, there's a lot of different retrieval markets that are being produced. So there's like the Mile Pop network, which is, you know, retriever or client pays for fetching data. I think they're working on one, though, that is provider pays as well. You can like prepay for your retrievals. And there's Saturn, which is like provider pays, and there's like a couple of others. So every flavor of payment scheme that you want, there'll probably be a retrieval market for it.
If you're one of those beautiful, wonderful people who just had your hand up a second ago, interested in running a Saturn node, please find this guy. What happened? I'm not sure where you are. There you go. Please find one of us. We would love to speak. Look forward to it.
Can I find you on Slack?
Yeah, Ansgar, ANSGAR on Filecoin Slack, or just
Do you have a channel?
one of us two wandering around here.
Yeah. There's a Saturn channel too, I think.
There is, yeah. There's also Filecoin Saturn channel on Filecoin Slack.
Also, the survey, you're going to get like a link to the survey, right? That Daniel mentioned. I just want to reemphasize that because the great, like what you're seeing here today is an outcome of the previous storage meetup, and really appreciate all your feedback. So please use the survey as well to provide your feedback into the engineering team, because the engineering team wants to hear from you. So please help us, like, you know, whatever features you're looking for, help us prioritize it.
Super useful. Like, yeah, literally the team was like, great, you know, we can work on that. Oh, the proof team, yeah, we can work on that. Like, this is great. You're telling us what you need. We can help work on those things.
Yeah, actually two. So on the Boost side, it's got this great new GUI, but for kind of enterprise scale, when you're running lots of machines, is there going to be some other method? I mean, typically we script stuff, we run stuff through command line. How's that look?
Actually, we literally just talked about this. The Boost team actually was just talking about this feedback yesterday during our stand-up. And I think if you have specific items that you're looking for, like if there's specific commands that you want to us to support, or things that are in the GUI that you actually would prefer on command line, like I would encourage you to like create an issue, because I think it's hard to track all the things that are happening in different threads and different discussions. So if you have it on GitHub, it's really easy for the dev team and me to look at it and go through and actually like take action. So that would be really great because we were looking for additional details and it was like, where are these details living? We don't quite know. And so yeah, that would be great if we could hear that from you. Yeah, and I think also one thing I did want to call out for everyone here, I know you've been super helpful, Stu, giving us feedback as well, but for anyone who has specific feedback on scaling markets nodes, there's a discussion link that's in this deck for Boost specifically. Please go and write your feedback there because we're brainstorming ideas how we want to do the scaling, how we want to make Boost more stateless, and so it would be really helpful if we can get information around like how your mining operation is set up so we can better optimize for the folks here. So that's one thing. And then one other thing, I'm just calling out all the Boost items right now. If you have also input on how you want to do your retrievals, like if you want to do HTTP retrieval, I think there's some overhead that might come with like running certain operations for that. Or if you are interested in having like a way to do bit swap data transfer, which would be compatible with IPFS, like is that something that you want and are willing to run, or is it something that you're not willing to run? I think that type of information would be really helpful for us in prioritizing how we want to go about the retrieval work for Boost. So thank you.
And the other question was around the indexer. Now, as storage providers, rather than running an index node, but what I've seen is there's a percentage, like 15% of my PCIDs are not in a good state, right? So part of it is trying to figure out how to diagnose and test that. But on the other side of things, what we're seeing is people actually publish something, gets on chain, it's proving.
Yeah.
But when we go to like sid.contact or some of the other tools, can't find it, right? It seems to have disappeared. So it's that concern about this difference between what we have and what's shown in the index.
Okay, so I don't know, like Hong Hao, feel free to jump in as well, but based on my understanding, the indexer nodes actually will go and pull a delta of like directly from you as a storage provider in terms of like the SIDs that you have. So I think if you are like, fixing something based on whatever it is that you're storing, like it should be able to get that delta on a like daily or maybe like 3 or 4 times a day basis.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is like if I go into the DAG store and I actually query it, about 15% show up in some form of error or new state or some state that's not, that doesn't look good, right? Available is what it should be in.
I see. Oh, this is if you query the indexer.
This is as a storage provider.
Oh, I see.
We're looking at the DAG store and we're saying, what's the status of all these SIDs? And about 85% are good, 15% are questionable. And I think it's not clear to storage providers how we maintain and manage that and keep it healthy. It's since the migration from Markets node to Boost.
I think previously there was some issue with the uptime of the indexer. And we like to solve that. We basically run another instance of the indexer now, like to keep the uptime high. I suspect that might be related to that, but I'm happy to follow up with you offline, and we can kind of open the issue to check that. Yeah.
Again, the concern is as storage providers, if we're interested in partaking and turning on indexing, that we know that there's some sort of way to easily know that we're in good shape. That's the high level. Then, of course, diagnosing and fixing secondary.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I'll follow up with you offline. Thanks.
Yeah, make sure there's a clear place for people to file issues if things are in a bad state, and that there's some good debugging and maintenance guides that people can follow async as well. We'll work on getting those in place.